Hello guys and welcome back to another tutorial within this course. Now we're going to switch it up today. We'll do something a bit more fun. What we'll be doing is creating a challenge thumbnail which basically revolves around the spicy versus sour challenge. Now this is a popular challenge which is taking place by a lot of YouTubers right now as we speak, and it's a continuous trend that I see a lot of YouTubers partaking in. It's a fun one, it's a fun challenge, and so in today's video what I'll be showing you and what you'll be predominantly learning about is layout and composition, and also how to make adjustments to represent a specific reaction on a subject's face. So of course if you're having spicy food, the reaction will be slightly different to someone having sour food, and so we're going to be creating some adjustments via Photoshop to represent that. Shout out to all the thumbnail designers who have created thumbnails in this niche, because I'm taking a lot of inspiration from you guys. So shout out to you guys for creating awesome thumbnail designs. And so without wasting any more of your time, let's get straight into the video. So you know the drill, let's go to new file, and we're going to keep the width to 1920 by 1080, resolution 272, 16-bit, and of course we're going to have a grey background. I like to do this for every thumbnail design that I create, especially when I'm just making cutouts. I can see if there's any fringes on my work. That's the only reason I have a grey background. So to do this very quickly, just type in 50 under the B tab right here and you will have a 50% grey background. And let's click create. So from a technical standpoint, this thumbnail isn't the most difficult to create, but you're going to learn a lot of important things that you can really transfer into any thumbnail. So pay attention and let's begin. So here is the subject we're going to be using. He's very excited. He's got his tongue out. Calm down, brother. Calm down. Okay, so what we're going to do, let's make a cutout of this person by simply selecting the subject, and let's see if this does a good job. Photoshop 2025 has really good cutouts if you use this, so if you have the later versions of Photoshop, you should be fine with this step. Otherwise, you may have to opt for longer methods like using the masking tool or just using the pen tool to cut out this subject. But in this case, I don't need to, so I'm not going to waste my time with that. Okay, so as you can see, a very nice cutout as is. Maybe we can just adjust a few things by just simply shifting the edge a slight bit. Just a slight bit, so -10 for shift edge, and we can also decontaminate colors as well. Okay, perfect. Now let's go ahead and click OK, and we can drag this layer into our canvas. And before anything else, I just want to make some refinements to the subject. So if we zoom in on this left hand side, you can see we have some details of the beard, these little strands of hair branching out from the beard area. On this side it's quite flat, and so let's remedy that right now. Let's click within the layer mask, let's press B for the brush tool, let's actually have the black color selected for a second and just remove this excess like so. As you can see, and let's also use a hard brush as well. And now I'm going to paint in some hair strands. Now to do this, we're going to stay within the layer mask. All I'm going to do now is press R for the rotate tool, and I'm just going to rotate the canvas like so, just to make it easier for us to paint in these hair strands. Okay, now just decrease the size of your brush to a hair strand size, and let's have the white color selected, and all I'm going to do is just simply paint in some hair strands, as you can see, creating some bumps just to make it look like the beard hair is branching out. So this is really just the first stage, which is just refining the subject and fixing any imperfections. Yeah, let's have a look. Okay, this is looking decent. What we can do now to remove this effect, this rotation that we've just created, all you need to do is press escape on your keyboard, and that will just reset the rotation back to normal. Okay, maybe we can just continue on a bit more. Now you can't branch out too much because of course we have a blue background on this image. As you can see, some of that blue is coming back, which we don't want. And then we can just use the inverse color to paint out some parts to create a more natural look. Okay, I think this is not bad, better than before at least. Yeah, so that's better than before. A bit more detail here. And you can just continue to refine this until you are satisfied. Okay, this is looking good to me. Now we can move on to the next step, which is just fixing any imperfections on the subject's face. Now mind you, we haven't even scaled this subject to the correct size or even focused on the position of the subject. We'll do that in just a moment. And the next step will be just to remove any imperfections on the face. So let's start off with the blemishes. Now to target these blemishes, these little spots or baby hairs that we want to remove, we're going to use the spot healing brush tool to do this. So simply select the tool and start removing these little baby hairs, these little blemishes, these spots, since we don't want those things to show up on this thumbnail. We're just retouching the subject here. And spend as much time as you need on this step, just removing any blemishes. And whether or not you would consider baby hairs blemishes is completely up to you. In my case, I think this won't look good as we sharpen the image, so I just want to remove these little baby hairs as well. But feel free to do whatever you want, guys. Yeah, looking good. Maybe some baby hairs down here. Okay, on the foreheads, let's see, just a couple spots. Yeah, this is looking pretty good. Let's go to the neck. Yep, one there. That's pretty much it. Okay, perfect. So we've removed pretty much all the imperfections on the subject's face, and now we can convert the subject into a smart object. So right click, convert to smart object, and then let's just focus on the scale. So Command or Control T and just scale up like so. Now I'm not too fond of this t-shirt, so I'm going to replace it by using AI. So Photoshop's generative AI is what I'll be using, but feel free to keep this t-shirt if you want, or maybe just change the color if that suits you. Especially for those of you who don't have the latest versions of Photoshop, I can understand that you may not be able to replicate the steps, so just keep the t-shirt as is if you have older versions of Photoshop. Okay, I'm just going to get the lasso tool and make a selection of this region. Yep, like so. Yep, so just make a selection of this region, and then let's go to Window, Contextual Taskbar, and type in Generative Fill. And we're going to type in white t-shirt. Okay, and click Generate. Now, as you can see with the generation, sometimes you get good results and sometimes you have what you see on screen, a terrible result. So all you need to do is just check the variations. In this case, I'm pretty happy with this one. This one looks pretty good to me. And if not, then you just repeat the process until you get the exact variation that you want. For me, this is looking pretty good. So this is before, and this is after. Okay, we'll use this t-shirt. So now what I'll do is merge it to the initial layer. So press Command or Control E to merge these two layers together. And now if I press Command and click on this subject, you can see that it doesn't have the correct selection, and it's actually just highlighting the previous selection we had before. So to fix this, what I will do is go ahead and right click, convert this into a smart object. And then what I'll do is go to the selection tools and click on select subject like so, just to make a selection of this subject once again. And then let's create a mask, and that should fix the problem. So once you're on the stage, let's just right click, convert to smart object once again. And now if I press Command or Control and click, we now have this newfound selection, the correct one. Okay, perfect. So we've sorted that out. Now I'll press Command or Control D to deselect. And now let's move on to the next step, which is to use Camera Raw Filter on our subject to boost the detail. So let's begin with that. So Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and let's adjust some settings. So I'm going to open up the shadows, as you can see, because what that does is it opens up a lot more detail in areas which are quite dark. So for example, just look at this beard when I have it to 0 and now at 10 or 15, you can see there's a lot more detail that opens up. This is why I like opening up the shadows. So let's keep this to +20 before and after. Yep, so +20. And now let's adjust the highlights as well. So you can see we have quite a bit of highlights here, so I want to actually reduce them. So we can just bring them down a slight bit, maybe to -10 for the highlights. Let's boost the contrast a slight bit, but not too much, maybe by 5. And now let's go into effects. Let's just boost the clarity to +5. And now let's go into detail and increase the sharpening to 30. Yeah, so a lot more detail in the subject's face. Now don't sharpen it too much because we will do a final sharpening at the end with the Camera Raw Filter. So let's just make a slight adjustment, nothing too drastic. So 10 for sharpening. Yeah, this is looking good. Now once you've done this, let's click OK. And that's the first stage done. Now what I'll do is create a duplicate of this and press Command or Control G. And you may have guessed we're going to create a backup folder. And we're going to then just drag this to the bottom and hide it. It's always good to have backups. Now let's right click on this subject, right click and convert back to a smart object once again. And let's just hide this annoying bar which is getting in the way, hide bar. And now let's go back into Camera Raw Filter once again. So go back into Camera Raw Filter and we're going to reduce the texture quite a bit. So let's go to effects, let's reduce the texture. And what that does is it creates this smooth skin effect, which you see on screen. So -85 should be fine. And now let's click OK. Okay, awesome. So now we've created our smooth skin effect, but that's applied to everything on this face. So let's go into our layer mask for Camera Raw Filter and press Command or Control I, like so, to invert all the effects we just added. And now it's just a matter of painting in with the white color, simply to add the effect, that smooth skin effect, only to the skin. Because of course we don't want this to be on the eyeballs, on the teeth, on the tongue. We want to preserve the details of those things, so we are only going to paint this on the skin. Now make sure your flow is set to 100% and that you're using a soft brush for this step, and let's paint in. So only over the skin, guys. And be careful to avoid the parts where there are details because we don't want to lose the details of those regions. So just decrease the size of your brush when you're going into the more finer areas. Yeah, this is looking good. So only over the skin. And as you can see, it's gradually starting to become smoother. So just make sure to get all parts of the skin. So if I just toggle between before and after already, so this is before and this is after. So we've smoothened the skin significantly already. And so let's continue on. Within the layer mask, we are just going to paint over the skin. Yep, as you can see, this is looking good. So this is before and this is after. Looking much better. Okay. Sometimes you can miss some areas if you're not paying attention, so just try and go over and focus on those areas which you might miss. It's quite easy to miss some areas. I would paint over these eye bags as well, just to reduce the wrinkles a slight bit. Yeah, this is looking awesome. So this is before and this is after. Perfect. Okay, awesome. Now what I'll do is just drag a duplicate of this into our backups folder just for good measure in case anything goes wrong. And I would recommend that at every stage of adjustments, just go ahead and duplicate one into your backups folder for good measure. Now let's do the dodge and burn effect, and this is really going to boost the contrast and detail of this subject. This is a technique which is used by pretty much every single high-level YouTuber there is. Unless you're going for a very realistic style, they are making use of these sort of effects. So let's replicate that style. So first, let's create two curves adjustment layers above this subject. Yep, so create one and press Command or Control J to duplicate. And now let's clip both of these to the subject. We'll go ahead and click within the layer mask as well. Press Command or Control I. Command or Control I to invert. Let's rename this one to highlights and shadows. And now for the highlights, let's boost the highlights. And for the shadows, the inverse. So boost the shadows like so. Okay, perfect. Now press B for the brush tool, and within the highlights layer mask we're going to start painting in some highlights. I don't really want to paint in too many highlights, so we're going to keep it minimal. So just take the flow down to about 5%. Okay, and we're just going to go over the highlights which already exist, and make sure you have a white color and a soft rounded brush while you're doing this. And we're just going to go over some of these highlights already. These ones we can avoid since they're already too bright, but we can just paint over some highlights, the other highlights on the face, just to boost them a slight bit. Okay, let's look. On the ears. And now for the more finer areas, we're going to decrease the size of our brush and just paint in those finer highlights. So the highlights which are in very small areas like this, we're just going to paint over with a small brush. Okay, this is looking good. Maybe we can also boost the eye color just by increasing the brightness a slight bit, but not too much. So this is the highlights before and after, before and after. So very subtle with the highlights. Now for the shadows, let's do the same thing. And I'm going to be doing a lot more for the shadows. So let's begin. Go over the eyebrows. Just to darken them a bit. The side profile of the nose. Just going over these dimples to enhance them and make them stand out a lot more than usual. And with this step, guys, you're really just going to learn from observation, just watching me do it, and you'll sort of grasp the concept of what I'm trying to do. So we're going over the shadows and we're decreasing the size of the brush for the finer areas. These lines, as you can see, we can enhance them with smaller brushes. And that actually boosts that part quite a bit. This is before and this is after. So you can see these shadows in the finer areas definitely have an impact. Every little detail counts here, so take your time with this step. Okay, this is looking awesome. So this is before all of our adjustments and this is after. So quite a dramatic difference before and after. Okay, now let's move on to the eyes. So specifically the white part of the eye, and then we'll recolor the eye itself. So let's go ahead and boost those. So I'm going to use a curves adjustment layer. So create a curves adjustment layer and clip it to the subject and rename this to eye. Eyes 1, yeah, that's fine. And I'm just going to boost the whites. So let's boost these whites, as you can see. Okay, yeah, to something like this. Now let's invert this mask and we are just going to paint in only over the white part of the eye, which I believe is called the sclera. And yes, I did search that up 2 minutes ago, so I'm not that smart. Okay, so let's go ahead and just enhance that. Use the brush tool, make sure you have the white color selected, put your flow all the way back up to 100% and use a hard brush for this step just to avoid any feathering and begin painting it. So just boosting the whites of the eye. And take your time with this step, you don't want to make any mistakes with this and sort of branch out like that. So just avoid doing that by taking your time. Yep, as you can see, it's looking pretty good. Like so. So this is before and this is after. We'll do the same thing now for the other eye. Let's just paint in. Trying to be as accurate as we can. Yep, like so. So now if we just zoom out and we toggle between before and after, you can see that we've boosted the whites of the eye. So before and after. Now, of course, since we created a curves adjustment layer, we have the flexibility of adjusting this effect to make it even stronger or weaker, as you can see. Now, of course, we don't want to go the opposite direction, so you can adjust the strength of this simply by adjusting the curves, or you can even adjust the opacity at any time to reduce the effect as well. So yep, let's try and boost this up quite a bit. Yep, maybe to something like this. Now, if you want to know the exact measurements, they are here. So let's click on this one, 211 and 237 if you're following along with this tutorial. Let's now move on to coloring these eyes. So let's create a human saturation adjustment layer. We're going to clip it to the subject. Let's click on colorize, and we just want to create a nice bluish color. So increase the saturation to something maybe like this for now. Let's invert this layer mask and rename this to eyes 2. And we are going to do the exact same thing we did before. Paint in the layer mask only to the part we want to affect. So make sure you have the white color selected and begin. Now with this step as well, the exact same thing, try and be as accurate as you can. So just take your time with this step. Yep, this is looking good. Let's do the same now on the other eye. So the best way to probably do this is just to increase the size of your brush to about this size, make one dab, and then just decrease the size of your brush. I think that just speeds it up a little bit. Yep, looking good. Yep, this is looking good. Okay, so now we've changed the colors of the eye. Now, if you want, you can adjust the color to whatever you want by just simply clicking on hue and saturation and adjusting the color from this point. So maybe you want to make it slightly more subtle. It's completely up to you. Now for me personally, the eyes are decent here, but I just wanted to add some color to them just to get your attention much quicker. And this is what a lot of YouTubers do themselves. They'll just adjust the eye colors and make them look slightly unnatural just to catch your attention very quickly. This is thumbnail design, so that's the objective, just to grab your attention and make you click. Okay, so we can maybe just make this a bluish color. This is before, this is after. Maybe we can boost the saturation. And let's see if we can play with the colors here. Yeah, let's keep it to this. This is looking just fine. Perfect. Now let's move on to the teeth. Now for the teeth, I will be first of all using a hue and saturation adjustment layer. So let's create one, clip it to the subject, rename this to teeth. And now invert this mask. Command or Control I to invert the mask. Let's just zoom in. And what I'm going to do first of all is simply just reduce the saturation down all the way to -100. Now of course this layer mask is hiding that effect, but if we just invert, basically we're just turning this into a grey layer right now. So what I'll do is just invert this back to black, and now we're going to paint in only over the teeth. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. As you can see. And of course, just be as accurate as you can with this step. Yep, as you can see, pretty good job. Now we're not done yet. Now, so we just desaturated the teeth, but now let's add a levels adjustment layer to this just to enhance the brightness. So what I'll do is create a levels adjustment layer. Let's clip it to this subject, and I'm now going to take the layer mask for the teeth layer and duplicate that into our levels adjustment layer. So press Alt or Option and drag in like so, click yes, and now let's rename this to Teeth 2, just to keep organized. Now from here we can adjust the brightness fairly easily just by bringing in the highlight slider, as you can see, and also the midtones as well. Yep. And by doing that, we maintain a lot of the quality in the image using a levels adjustment layer, and we don't get that blurry feathery effect if we just increased the lightness value itself. Okay, so this is the first adjustment, this one, and then this is the second additional adjustment on top. Now what I would suggest to do is just have a look at the eyes and the teeth and make sure that the brightness levels of both are in the same region, so that you don't have something overpowering the other. Okay, so I believe these are pretty much the same. So this is pretty good. Now you can play around with this, maybe we can make this slightly brighter. Yeah, this is perfect. Okay, we're making good progress. A couple more adjustments to do to the face, and then we can focus on the other steps. So what I will do now is I'm going to boost the color of the lips, because as you can see right now, they are pretty pale in comparison to the skin color, and they almost sort of merge in with the skin. So just to create some separation from the skin itself, I'm going to boost the vibrance of this color by just adding in some more reds. So to do this, let's go to adjustment layers, create a color balance adjustment layer, and clip it to the subject. Let's then increase the reds in the midtones and take this up reasonably high, maybe to plus 30, and now let's just invert this layer mask. And now just to paint that effect in only over the lips, so zoom in, B for the brush tool. Within the layer mask we are going to paint in this color. And you do want to be careful with how much vibrance and color you add in here, because we don't want it to look like lipstick. So there's a fine line of how much color to add in. Okay, awesome. So this is before and this is after. Much better in my opinion, and it doesn't look like lipstick, but it can do. So for example, if I just increase this all the way up, then it starts to look like lipstick. Unless that's the look you're going for, guys, go ahead, but that's not what I'm going for. So let's just undo that. And now to move on to the tongue. Now for the tongue, and you may have seen already in the thumbnail preview, we are going to color half of it red and half of it green. Now this is to symbolize the spicy side on the left and the sour side on the right. And so of course, if you have spicy stuff on the left, you want the left side of the tongue to represent that side. Just common sense. I don't think I need to mention that, but you know, some of you may be feeling excited and want to try something new. No, don't do that. Okay, we want to keep the red on this side if we have the red stuff on the left, and we'll do the same for the sour. Okay, now to do this and how to create this effect will be quite simple. We'll just be using a hue and saturation adjustment layer to achieve this. So let's create a hue and saturation adjustment layer, clip it to the subject, and let's first adjust the color to what we want. So we want this to be a vibrant red. So let's click on colorize and let's just boost the saturation of this all the way up to 100. And let's just decrease the lightness a slight bit, as obviously we can see some of these highlights. So just decrease the lightness and that should remove those. So yeah, maybe -17. And really you just need to look at the tongue and be happy with the color of that, because that's the only thing we're going to be coloring in. Let's now invert this mask, Command or Control I, and now what we're going to do is paint in that effect only to half of the tongue. Now I'm sure you guessed that already, but we need to do this in an accurate way. So how we can do this is by using the marquee tool. What I'm going to do is just highlight half of this tongue region like so. So just go ahead and make a selection up until where you get half of the tongue within that selection. Okay, let's try again. And try and make it even on both sides. You don't want one side to be dominant against the other, so try and get things dead in the center. Yeah, this is pretty good. I'm happy with this. Okay, looking good. Yep, and then it's just a matter of pressing B for the brush tool, and within this layer mask you can just paint in, as you can see. So just paint in over the tongue and not these regions here, although they are in the selection, so just be careful with that. And now we need to do the right side of the tongue. So what I would do first of all is just press Command or Control D to deselect, and I would then go ahead and create another hue and saturation adjustment layer, clip it to the subject and adjust the color. Now we need to go for a vibrant green for this one. So let's go ahead and adjust these colors. So let's click on colorize. Let's bring it to a green and let's boost the saturation as well. Yep, all the way up to 100 is a bit too strong. Let's do maybe 75. And then like before, let's just decrease the lightness just to remove those spotlights. Yep, like so. Okay, perfect. Now let's invert this layer mask. And now let's just get our marquee tool once again, zoom in, and do what we did previously. So just make a selection and try and be accurate with this as best as you can. And try and zoom in for this just to make sure that you're not overlapping. So yep, let's try this selection, looks pretty good. And now let's just paint in on the right hand side of the tongue. Okay, like so. So now let's press Command or Control D to deselect, and yep, that selection was perfect, but we're not done yet. What I now want to do is just decrease the hardness of this line. So you can see the line, the separator in the middle, is just way too sharp for my liking, and this makes it look slightly unnatural. Especially when you zoom out, it just looks like you've painted it in, and we want to remove that look. So to avoid this, let's go into our layer masks. So as you can see, we're in our layer mask options, and we are going to increase the feather of this. So let's just boost up the feather to around 1.7 pixels, and we'll do that for both of the sides. So let's go to the red side and do the exact same thing. And now as you can see, that creates a feathered look in the center of the tongue, and this looks much better than before. So this is before and this is after. Much better in my opinion. Okay guys, so we're done with the tongue. Cool, that looks really nice. And I've also just named these layers, so red tongue for the red part and green tongue for the right hand side. Okay, so now we can move on from the tongue. Now what I'm going to focus on is adding a red tint to the left hand side of this subject, because of course we want it to look as if he's had something spicy. So we want the face to do the talking here and show off the expression of someone who's had some spicy food. So let's create that by using some red color. Now what I'll do is go to adjustment layers, click on solid color, and I'm going to select a red color. This is the hex code as well, and let's click OK. Let's clip this to the subject, and I'm also going to now invert this layer mask. So I'm not adjusting the blending modes, let's just keep it to normal and invert the layer mask. Now let's press B for the brush tool, and we are going to decrease the opacity of this layer all the way down to, let's say, 20%. Okay, that should be fine. And we will also now adjust the flow to 15%. Okay, so this gives us some flexibility, and so we're not painting in heavy dabs of red in one go. We can do it in a controlled manner. Let's just zoom in. B for the brush tool, white color selected, and use a soft brush as well. And we're going to just start adding in some red. So I just want to paint in reds into certain regions to make it look like he's just a ghost chili or ghost pepper. And we can recreate that look simply by just adding in some color. So that's what I'm trying to do right here. Yeah. And for the separator line, we don't need a separator line per se, but rather just look at the separator line of this tongue and use that as a reference of where to paint in and where to stop. So of course, this is our imaginary line in the middle, and just use the tongue as the reference. And so, yeah, let's just continue on this region and finish off what we started. This is looking good. And now let's just decrease the flow to about 5%, and we'll paint in some red tint over the rest of the left hand side of the face. As you can see. Yeah, this is looking pretty good already. Okay, this is looking nice. Let's maybe just enhance this region even more. Yeah, this is looking nice. So this is before and this is after. Now you can make this slightly more exaggerated just by creating a duplicate of this layer, so Command or Control J to duplicate this layer and clip it to the subject, and you can just adjust the opacity of this just to either increase that effect or decrease it. So let's just adjust the opacity moving down, not up. Of course, we don't want this to be overly strong. So this is before, and maybe we can do 3%. So just add a bit more red in the regions we painted in. Okay, this is looking better. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this looks. Now guys, you can also, I'll just toggle this one off for a second. I'm going to adjust the color and see if we can do something better. You can play around with the colors to see if you can get a more realistic look. As you can see, we can go for a more darker red, or we can go for a vibrant red. It's really up to you. Yeah, we don't want to do orange. Don't know why I clicked that. Yep, let's keep it as is. I like this vibrant red we have going on. Let's just put this layer back on. Yep, this is looking really nice. So this is before and this is after. Yep, so we've just painted in some red on the left hand side of the face. Now for the right hand side, we need to do some adjustments as well. So we want to desaturate this side just to create some contrast between the two sides. And so we're going to desaturate the face to showcase that. So what I'll do is create a hue and saturation adjustment layer, clip it to the subject, and let's just decrease the saturation from here. Yeah, maybe to something like this. So -10 for saturation. Let's just invert this layer mask, Command or Control I, and I'm just going to paint over the skin, just as a way of showcasing a difference in the facial expression when he has something sour. Okay, we'll use a white color and do the same thing. Now I'm going to just increase the flow all the way up to 100% and paint over the skin. Now I would tend to avoid the beard as well, so don't get that in your mask, just the skin itself. Yep, and the neck as well, of course, let's not forget that. And that's just reminded me as well, on the red layer, let's also paint over the neck region. I think we missed that completely. So let's go back down to 5% flow and just add in some reds on the neck as well. Let's do it a little more fainter. Don't need to paint in too much. Yep, so just adding a bit of reds on the neck as well. Okay, back to hue and saturation. I think we've done a good job here of targeting everything. This is before and this is after. Let's take the saturation down even further just to create more contrast. Yep, maybe we can do let's do -30. I think this is much more drastic, but it gives off a lot of contrast. Whereas if we keep it to the original, it's quite orange and it sort of blends in with the red, or it's not too far off. So just by decreasing the opacity, we create a lot more contrast between the two sides, as you can see. Yeah, this is perfect. Now what I might do is I might just paint in a bit of red on this cheek region, but I'll use a different color. So let's go into solid color, pick a maroonish color like this, clip it to the subject, invert this layer mask, and I'm going to just paint in a bit of color to the cheek regions so that the person has a bit of color in his face, but not too much. Yeah, maybe to something like this. So a little bit of color, not too much. Yeah, that looks just fine. Okay, perfect. Now let's move on to the next step, which is just to stylize the face even further. And so we're going to customize both eyes to signify different reactions. Okay, looking good. So before we just start, let's just rename our layers. So we have red face left and red face left 2 on the right hand side. Green face right, and we can say color right. Okay, perfect. So just keep organized as best as you can. It's going to help you a lot in the long run, especially because we're going to be adding a lot of layers in just a moment. Okay, so now let's move on and customize these eyes. So I'm going to start off with the left hand side. So what I'll do, create a new layer. Let's rename this to left eye. And we are not going to clip this to the subject. We can keep it as is. Now I'm just going to zoom in to this region. And now let's press B for the brush tool. And we're going to select a red color, like so. And now let's take the flow down to 3% or 2%. And I'm going to now, with a soft brush, just add in some reds gradually. So as you can see, very gradually, just add in some reds to the bottom region of the eye. As you can see. So let's just follow it along. Now I'm not going to paint over the blue part of the eye. So let's just target the white areas and paint in some red gradually. And gradually go up. Now you want the red to be more concentrated at the bottom, so just be more faint up top. So I'm just going to start painting in some more red at the bottom of the eye, as you can see. And this is really just to simulate the look of someone who's reacting to something very spicy. If you've ever seen someone have something extremely spicy, the eyes start to water and become red. And since this thumbnail revolves around the spiciest snacks in the world, I think this sort of look is befitting for the eyes. Okay, so if you just zoom out and try and make things sort of blend in nicely, so a nicer transition. So just remove any harsh lines. Okay, this is looking good. And then very faintly, with maybe 1% flow, at the top here, just paint in a bit, but not too much. Okay, perfect. Yeah, this is looking good. So this is before and this is after. And see how much of a difference that alone makes. Now from here you can even just adjust by pressing Command or Control T on the layer, and you can just sort of warp the shape if you want it to take up less space of the complete eye. For example, like as right now, it's taking up most of the eye, the red color. So if we just press Command or Control T and bring it down a bit, it's not covering the eye as much. Okay, so maybe this is slightly better. Before and after. Okay, perfect. Now let's move on to the right hand side. So I'm going to create a new layer, rename this to right eye, in caps, right eye. And now let's press B for the brush tool. And we're going to use the same color. Let's increase the flow all the way up to 100%. And we're going to use a very small brush, the smallest size we have. Okay, so 1. The size should be at 1. And I'm going to paint in some little eye vessels. Okay, this is way too strong. Maybe we can do 30% flow. Let's try 30. Okay, and yep, this is better. So now we're just going to paint in some eye vessels. So we're just simulating the look of some eye vessels, painting in some squiggly lines, as you can see. And this is our way of symbolizing that the subject is having something sour, his eyes wide open with his blood vessels popping out. And now, as you can see, I'm not really doing anything particular, like there's no actual thought process behind how to create these. I'm just creating some squiggly lines, and if they look realistic, I'm running with it. Think of a branch on a tree and the little branches which come off of that. So just paint in and then paint some branches, as you can see. Now let's zoom out. Yeah, this is good. Yep, I'm liking how this looks. Okay, maybe we can make this slightly more faint by just decreasing the opacity, maybe to 80%. So before and after. And you have to sort of gauge it by distance as well, because from a distance, if you can't actually see what's going on, you may have to adjust the opacity for that. Now I think this is not too bad, maybe 85% is the best of both worlds, so let's keep it to 85%. This is looking good, and maybe we can erase some of these as well. Yeah, this is okay. I'm not too fussed with this. This is okay. Perfect. Okay, moving on. Let's now add some teardrops just to emphasize these expressions. And so I'm going to add one on this side and one on this side. And then we'll just stylize them a slight bit. Okay, so here is what I have. And this image looks like an alien if you're paying attention. There's a nose here. It looks very odd. Weird picture. But we just need this teardrop. So I'm not going to focus on this image. And all we're going to do is just make a selection of this region right here. Press Command or Control J to create a duplicate. Let's hide that spooky image. And now let's drag this into our canvas. Click yes, and let's place this at the very top of all of our layers. Okay, perfect. Yep, so once you have this, and now it's just a matter of making a selection of this region. So all we need to do is click on it, press select subject, and it will select just this part. We'll press mask, yep, like so, and let's adjust the blending mode to screen. Okay, perfect. Now let's just create a better teardrop shape by just going in the layer mask, pressing B for the brush tool, and then we can just refine this shape. Let's have the flow set to 100 when we do this. So just use the black color, and we can remove this top part, and we can use a hard brush as well to create a nice teardrop shape. As you can see. So something like this will do. Now we can go ahead and rename this layer to teardrop. And we are going to now right click and convert this into a smart object. Now once you've done that, let's go ahead and press Command or Control T and scale this down. And now it's just a matter of placing them on both eyes. So I'm going to place the first one around here. And you also want to make sure that the scale is proportionate to the subject's face. So you want the teardrop not to be extra large and not too small. It has to be just right based upon the size of the head. Okay, so let's try and get this right. Zoom out to get a better view. Yeah, that's looking pretty good to me. Okay, maybe slightly bigger. Yep, and slightly higher up. Yeah, that's looking good. Let's create a duplicate of this layer. So hold down Alt or Option and just drag to create a duplicate. Let's place one up here as well. And I'm going to actually compress this shape just to make it slightly different from the one right here so that things are more unique. We can even maybe just expand this one a slight bit. And so I hope you get the gist of this. We're just adjusting the shape just to make things look slightly different and not look like a copy and paste activity. Okay. Yeah, so this is looking awesome, guys. Looking really nice. Maybe I can remove that top part of the tear right there. Create a layer mask. B for the brush tool and just remove that top part like so. Perfect. Okay, this is looking awesome. So as you can see, we're doing a pretty good job, and from the beginning, if we look at what we started with, take all these adjustments away, we've done a lot to the subject's face. So this is before and this is after. And so with these type of thumbnails, a lot of the focus is on the subject and just creating those adjustments to help to express those reactions. Okay, now similar to what we did for the teardrops, I'm now going to add in some patches of sweat on the forehead. This again is just to help express the reactions even better. So what I have right here is the image we'll be using, and I'm just going to simply drag this into our canvas like so. Click yes and make sure it's placed at the very top of all the layers. Now let's just scale this down. So press Command or Control T, and as you can see, it's quite a large image. So let's scale this down to fit on the canvas. like so, maybe even smaller. Yep, to maybe something like this. And now let's adjust the blending mode to screen. Now from here, we're going to go into levels. So press Command or Control L to go into levels. And we just need to adjust some of these settings. So we're going to start with the shadows and just opening them up. And with the midtones as well, we can adjust some of those. Yep, like so. And then let's now just place this on the forehead. Yeah, like this. Create a layer mask. Press B for the brush tool. Have your flow set to 100% and use a black color. And let's use a soft brush as well. And we're just going to paint out from all the other regions apart from the forehead. And I don't want this to be just completely just patched onto the forehead. Let's try and make this realistic, and I'll just show you in a second. So let's just remove it from some regions and keep it in some others. To something like this. As you can see, this looks much more realistic than if you just patched it all onto the forehead and just changed the blending mode to screen. That wouldn't look convincing. This looks much better in my opinion. Okay, perfect. Then you could just adjust the position. Yeah, but overall, this is what we wanted to achieve. Now you can go back into levels, Command or Control L. Maybe you could just boost the highlights a slight bit, just to make them more visible from a further distance. Okay, yeah, so you can see it's more clear to see now. And now for the final thing to add to the subject, and that is right here on the tongue. We're going to add some fire on this tongue right here on the red side, and on the green side we'll add some thunder. Just some visual elements to help reinforce the reaction. Okay, so let's start off with the fire. I'm going to use this image right here. Let's just drag this into our canvas. Click yes and make sure it's placed at the very top. You can also now scale it down. So let's do that. Very small. And we'll change the blending mode to screen. Okay, perfect. Now just scale it down even more. Adjust the rotation. And we're going to place it on the red side of the tongue. Like so. So just scale down even more. To something like this. Now just create a layer mask. Press B for the brush tool. And with the black color and having a soft brush, just go over the edges just to feather this in. As you can see. So this is looking awesome. Perfect. Now we'll do the same on this side for the green side. Let's get our image. Let's drag this into our canvas. Click yes, and we are going to scale this down. Command or Control T. Scale it down. And adjust the blending mode to screen. Go into levels, Command or Control L. And we can just remove this border. Like so. Perfect. Cool. Now let's just scale this down even further and rotate it. You get the gist of what I'm trying to do here, guys. Okay, so try and follow the same angle as you did for the fire. Same sort of position. And let's change the color of this thunder to green. So go into hue and saturation. Click on colorize and clip it to the thunderbolt, and all we need to do is just change this to a green color. So boost the saturation and have it be a green color like so. Now of course, since this is somewhat thicker than this side, I'm going to merge these two layers together. So now we have a green thunderbolt. Let's just change it back to screen, and I'm going to duplicate this thunderbolt a couple times just to expand the bolt and make it slightly thicker. So Command or Control J, 1 and 2. And you can see that's slightly more thicker now. Okay, perfect. Then we can just merge these all into one, Command or Control E, and change the blending mode back to screen. Perfect. Okay, this is looking awesome. Okay, looking really nice. Now let's proceed to sharpening this subject and boosting the detail. So how we are going to be doing this is by the following. So just pay attention. Let's first select all of our layers, all of them, and we are going to press Alt or Option and drag them into our backups folder just to have a backup. Now once you've done that, let's now select the subject layer, and then we will go all the way up to all of our adjustments. So all these adjustment layers which are clipped to the subject, and we are going to merge them all into one layer. So press Command or Control E to merge them all into one. Let's now rename this to subject, and I'm going to boost the detail of this subject by doing the following. So we are going to duplicate this subject, press Command or Control J, and we are going to go to Filter, Other, and High Pass. Now we're going to keep the radius to 6 pixels and click OK. And now I want to change the blending mode to soft light. So select soft light, and then let's just clip this to the subject layer. Now I'm going to rename this layer to High Pass. And as you can see, that's sharpened the image as is. By just adjusting the blending mode, you can see the difference from before and after. So this is before and this is after. Now I don't want this effect to affect everything on the face, only certain parts of the face. So what we need to do is create a layer mask, invert this effect, and we are going to paint it in where we want it to exist. Now for me, the important areas to target are the areas with detail. So for example, the eyebrows, the eyes, the nose, the teeth, the tongue, and the beard. The skin, not so much. Okay, so let's focus on that. So within the layer mask, press B for the brush tool and use the white color. Make sure you have your flow set to 100% and that you're using a soft rounded brush, and simply just paint over the areas you want to affect. So as you can see, look how much detail you get by just doing that step. So this is before and this is after. The eye pops out a lot more. So let's do the same on this side. Let's go over the eyebrows. Yep, awesome. Let's go over the nose. Let's go over these little wrinkles on the face. Let's go over the mouth and tongue as well. Let's also target the beard just to get more detail in the beard. As you can see, just boosting the detail of each and every single hair strand. Let's get the ears as well, don't forget that. And that should be it. Maybe we can do the hair as well a tiny bit at the bottom where the roots are. Okay, awesome. So this is looking much better, and so this is before and this is after. Now we've reached the stage where we've completed all our adjustments on the subject. Now of course we need to move on to adding in the snacks. So on the left hand side we're going to have spicy, on the right hand side we're going to have sour. Now for me, in my opinion, I don't think this part is worth teaching you how to make a selection of a crisp packet and placing it within the canvas. I think that's pretty simple to do, but for the sake of just showing you, I'll just show you what to do. Just simply select your snack, and by the way guys, I'm going to provide you with all the images for the snacks that I use in this thumbnail so you can just follow along as well. All you need to do, if you haven't yet guessed so, is make a selection of this crisp packet. So select subject, should be fine. Yep, let's make a selection of this. Yep, as you can see, create a mask and drag it into your canvas. Now what I do need to teach you is more so the composition aspects and layout aspects to keep in mind. So I'll just run through those after I've laid everything out. So what I'll do is place all my snacks, and then I'll run through the important design principles that you need to keep in mind when placing your snacks. Okay guys, so I've placed my snacks for the spicy side. As you can see, we have a wide variety of different snacks, most of which are actually trending in that sort of scene for that specific challenge, which is a very important thing to keep in mind as well, is that you want to create familiarity by adding in things which are trending, especially for challenges like this. Now you could add in random spicy snacks which no one knows about, but that's less likely to get clicks, but of course that depends on what the actual video is about. So of course, this is the most ideal scenario for this specific style of thumbnail, is that you use trending items for the challenge. But that's up to the person who's creating the video. That's out of our control. But let's circle back to layout. As you can see, we have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 snacks on this side. Now, I've not just randomly placed these snacks. Every single snack you can sort of make out what it is. All of these logos right here you can see. So Cheetos, Pakui, this one you can pretty much make out, Toe of Satan, Takis, Doritos, Lil Nitro, Max, and Ghost Pepper. Okay, now I've jumbled them all together, but you can see and make out what each one is. And so from a distance, you want the viewer to at least be able to see some of these. Now, I'm not saying every single logo has to be in sight, but you do have to make an effort to have some of these visible, because otherwise, what's the point? If we just slap all these snacks together and we cover all the logos, then we lose the purpose of adding in visual context. Each and every single one of these elements serves as a purpose to communicate that this is within the challenge. If people can't understand what spicy snacks you're eating, they're less likely to click. The next mini lesson, you could say, is layout. So as you can see, I have one of these crisps at the front, in front of the subject, and then the rest are at the back. So play around with the composition, the layout, try and have some snacks at the front, in front of the subject, and some at the back. Mix it up and experiment for yourself. If you're following along, in this case, I have one of these snacks in front. Okay, that's lesson 2. Now lesson 3 is to mix up the rotation of these items. So as you can see, we have this angle, we have this angle, we have straight, we have this, we have this, we have this, we have this, and we have this. A lot of this, okay guys, but we have them at different angles, okay? Nothing is all in one specific angle, and that just makes it look more natural and not just photoshopped in. And so just try and switch up the angles ever so slightly. That's going to make this composition look much more appealing. Now lesson 4 is pretty simple. Just do not overcrowd the canvas with snacks. So of course we have about 8 here, and I'm sort of pushing it to the upper limits of what's reasonable, but do not go and do something like 20, because then no one's going to be able to see each and every single one, or if they do, they're not going to pay enough attention to really sort of decipher what it is because of the scale of each item. So make sure to pick around 6 to 9 items per side, because that's really the max you can add in without it starting to look overcrowded, and that actually allows the viewer to look at every single snack and give it some attention. And the 5th and final lesson, and this one's more of a tip than a lesson. As you can see, if I zoom in, I haven't actually covered all these little gaps. You can see right here, and there's a gap here and some at the top. I haven't covered those, and the reason for that is because we need to focus more so on composition rather than filling in gaps. Focus on getting the viewer to be able to see the logos and actually decipher what the items are. If you have any of these gaps like so, the best solution for this is to use a red colored background, and that will just take the viewer's attention away from these little holes. So for example, let's go to the very bottom, create a new layer, let's create a solid color adjustment layer like so, and let's select a maroonish, a dark maroonish color. Yeah, maybe to something like this. Yep, this is looking good. And now from a distance, you can see these holes don't become so prominent. Now forget this side, we'd do the same for that, just using a green color, but the fact of the matter is, it's alright to have some gaps as long as your focus is on getting the composition of these items right, because that's the main thing that's going to get people to click. So yeah, let's use this color, maybe a darker red, even darker, to something like this, And then I can just, because I've grouped everything into one group, I can adjust the movement of everything in one go. So simply have the group selected, and then with the arrow keys I can shuffle them slightly to adjust the position. Yep, so as you can see now, we've filled in this little gap, and these ones up here, maybe we can move this a little bit. So just play around with the composition, but in my case I'm pretty happy with this. I don't need to adjust anything from here. Okay, now I only need this background on this left hand side, so we will go to our layer and simply within the layer mask press B for the brush tool, and using a hard brush and having the black color selected, we could just paint this out from this side. Yep, like so. Yep, perfect. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing on the right hand side. I'm going to place my sour snacks, and I'll also add in a background if need be. Okay, so I've finally managed to add in the sour side and place my items in a specific way, just like I did before, just to make sure everything is visible to the viewer. I'll say this again, you don't have to have everything visible, but you need a couple of these things to be viewable to the viewer. You can also see that I've added in a green background just for those little gaps which I couldn't manage to sort of fill in, and that's not a problem. If you look at it from a bird's eye view, it doesn't become a problem at all. Now, a good tip I would suggest all of you to do is, if you have any of these images and they seem slightly lacking in detail, you can always just sharpen them very easily. Just go to filter and sharpen each layer. Yeah, as you can see. So any of these images which are slightly lacking in detail, just boost them up with a sharpen. All we need to do now is boost this thumbnail by taking it into camera raw filter. Okay, so let's have the top layer selected, and then press Command, Option, Shift and E to merge all the layers in the layer section into one layer. Then let's right click, convert to Smart Object, and then click on Filter and Camera Raw Filter. And now let's begin enhancing this thumbnail. So let's start off in the light section. Yep, and maybe we can boost the exposure. Let's say to plus 0.15. Yep, this is before, this is after. Yep, that looks good. Maybe we'll do 0.1. Yep, this is better. Let's try and boost the contrast a bit. We'll do plus 15 for contrast, before and after. Yep. Let's try and boost the highlights a slight bit, not too much, maybe by plus 5. And let's also slightly open up the shadows as well. Maybe 2 plus 3. Okay, let's now go into color. Let's increase the vibrance. Maybe 2 plus 10, so this is before, this is after. Yep, and let's boost the saturation, but not too much. So I'd say plus 5. Yep, plus 5, or maybe plus 3 works just fine. Yep, plus 3 just works fine. Yep, plus 3. Let's go into effects, let's boost the texture. 2 plus 10. Boost the clarity as well. 2 plus 5, and let's add in a vignette effect. So what I'll do is bring in some shadows, and then I'll take the feather down to 0, and we can now look at the shape of our vignette. And now you can adjust the roundness to the shape of your liking. And then once you've done that, bring the feather back in. Maybe we can increase the vignette. Yep, like so. Okay, this is looking awesome. So this really just helps to bring the attention towards the center of the thumbnail and make you look at the subject, which is why we want to guide the viewer first of all. So using a vignette is really good for this thumbnail style. Okay, I'm going to avoid adding in any grain. I don't want to add it in this thumbnail. I think it looks better without it. Let's now move into detail and boost the sharpening. So plus 10 for sharpening. And finally, let's now go into calibration. and adjust the red and green hues. Maybe we can get a better hue for both. Okay, so let's adjust the reds. Nope, the reds are pretty good. And let's try with the greens. Yep, maybe this is looking better. +8. Yep, +8 for green primary on hue. So we just adjusted it more to the bluer side a slight bit. Okay, this is looking awesome. Now there are some questions you may be thinking, like for example, I could have potentially added in some drop shadows underneath some of these items. I tried that and I think that just ruined the detail of the images I had right here. So I didn't opt for drop shadows underneath these items, but feel free to add that in if you want. And a final touch, which is completely optional, which is why I just added this in at the very end, is because it's not needed. But in my opinion, I think it just adds some visual context to make people understand that it's spicy versus sour, and they can think of that in an instant, which is very important in thumbnail design, is getting to the point quickly. So personally, I would probably add this in, but I've seen a lot of thumbnails with this particular style which avoided using any versus symbol, and that's completely fine. And I've provided you all with this icon, so feel free to add it in at your own discretion. For me, all I did to this icon was just add a bit of a black stroke on the outside, and then I just converted it into a smart object. So just make sure to do that step if you add this in. And so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, a spicy versus sour challenge thumbnail. Thank you very much guys for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Peace.